All right, we're hot, buddy. We're going hot.
All right, let's do it.
So this is actually the first. This is the first recording of the VFRL podcast, Veterans for Responsible Leadership. And we are talking with Dan Barkhuff, who is our founding father. And we're going to get into a little bit about who Dan is, where he came from, and how he ended up going down this path.
So full disclosure to anyone listening, Mark and I go back pretty far. My first experience with Mark was in the pool at the Naval Academy with Phil Capusta trying to teach us underwater knot tying.
Never heard this story.
You never heard this? Well, I just remember everyone was like really, really cold except for you. I don't think that's a gene you have is to be cold. So Mark and I have known each other for, at this point, 20 years, really.
We're rounding off, right?
Yeah, we're rounding up a little bit, but not much longer.
No, and so that all started off, and well, let's back up to the world of growing up. So what's that story about? Where do you start things off at?
Yeah, so Dan Barkhuff, like Mark was saying, founded VFRL. So originally I'm a New Englander. So, I was born in Maine Medical Center, lived there till I was about 8. And then we moved to central Massachusetts and grew up in a town called Groton. It's kind of near Lowell. It's the closest town of any size, really. But pretty, sort of rural existence. Was super into sports, not very good at them, but super into them. Basketball, baseball. The big thing was basketball with me growing up. I've always been a huge hoops fan and had aspirations of playing, but was never quite good enough. I used to, basically sit in the corner and shoot threes. I was kind of an undersized two guard and like a not very competitive, regional scene. There's decent basketball in Massachusetts, but mostly, around Boston or Worcester or Springfield. And we were kind of, we were small ball. We were a small high school, and but that was my first love, was basketball, and track and field was kind of something to stay in shape for hoops, really. And that's really it, man. A pretty typical childhood, really. Just basketball, kind of year round was my thing. And got a younger brother, older sister, as a kid did the paper route thing. But was always just kind of focused on sports.
So did you decide to leave Massachusetts for the Naval Academy because there's no good local colleges to attend, or was there another?
Yeah. No, I don't know what it's like for you, man, but well, you were a prior enlisted guy, but for me, I applied to Air Force, West Point, and Navy, and I don't even remember if I applied to a civilian college. I don't think I did. Or if I did, maybe it was like UMass or something like that. But my heart was kind of always set on Navy, and I thought I wanted to be a Marine. That was kind of the initial plan. I didn't even know what special warfare was, or the SEAL teams, or anything like that. So, kind of got exposed to it, and you know how it was at school. Like, you meet people who have wanted to be a SEAL from, the time they came out of the chute, basically. And, for me, I was kind of a little bit Johnny come lately.
You want to hear a funny Marine story?
Heck yeah.
So the same world of Phil Capusta. So for the listening audience, when you get selected for Naval Special Warfare for SEALs, was it 16 of us?
Yeah.
16? Can't believe I remember that number. So Phil Capusta, who was our SEAL on the yard on the Naval Academy. So it's just a total good time class that you take your last semester at the Naval Academy. Right. That's specific to your specialty. So pilots do whatever pilots do, ship drivers. And so we had our class of 16 guys. And I knew I'd made the right choice. about the Marine Corps. When we were coming back from one of our, I don't know if it was any form of actual martial arts, just brawling on a wrestling mat. But
Well,
I came back and
Kapusta was all into jiu-jitsu, and none of
yeah,
us even knew. This was like before like UFC. No one knew what jiu-jitsu was, but he was making
yeah.
us do. He was trying to teach us how to triangle people and stuff, and
But we came back one time and we just finished like a round robin where
yeah,
survival of the fittest. So everybody was just bruised, and I was walking through the hall, and at the Naval Academy, you have to greet every, senior listed, anybody above your rank, wherever you find them. So I was walking down the hall, and I said, I don't remember what his rank was. Let's call him a gunny, probably a gunny. And I said, "Good morning, gunny." And he gave me some type of grunt, and I just kept going about my, and I got about halfway down the hallway, and he said, "Hey, midshipman, that shirt is no longer serviceable." So you had a uniform, it's called a blue rim. So it's an actual uniform item that you have to wear. And I just come back from basically a street fight, and I had blood, my blood, somebody else's blood. It was half ripped off, and so thankfully he was there to tell me that shirt was no longer meant to serve. That was kind of that's my
yeah,
reflection on that. I would
yeah.
have never survived in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, Marine Corps, love those guys, but certainly Naval Special Warfare is a little more free flowing. They dispense with some of the some of the spit and polish that the Marine Corps is famous for.
All right, now so we're at the Naval Academy. What did you do there? I remember
So
you
at
as a
Navy,
runner.
so I ran. I mean, I ran cross country and track and field, and I was, I was on the team. That's about all I can say. It was hardly an illustrious career. We had some talent back then. They probably still do, but we had guys. Mike Ryan running a 4-minute mile, Aaron Lanzell. These are guys who went on and no actual Olympians, but guys who went on to compete at like a national and international level, Olympic trials. And that wasn't me at all. I was clocking some decent times in the 1500 and the 5000 for someone who was running at a D3 school and not a D1 school. So I was enthusiastic about it. I liked it. It kept me, gave me something to do at Navy. And in a lot of ways really kind of contributed to, the success that I've had kind of throughout my life, just, sort of the, learning to work hard to achieve a goal. That's something you kind of only get from sports, I think. But in the grand scheme of D1 track and field athletes, I sucked. I was terrible.
Did it keep you off the drill field?
It kept me off the drill field, yeah. So that was, that was good.
So again, a little fun fact about the Naval Academy. Was it basically every Friday afternoon? Or once it was a month?
Yeah.
I did it so little I don't even recall. But
Right.
if there's no other reason to be in sports, it was because it would oftentimes mean you have to get dressed up in your, 3-piece monkey suit and carry a rifle out in Annapolis heat and cold with 4,000 of your closest friends,
Right.
learning how to, marching is not a midshipman's best friend at any time, but especially under those conditions. So a lot of us were more than happy to trade a 4 o'clock wake up for practice over
Right.
an afternoon drill call.
You rode crew, right?
Yeah, I rode basically 2 years and then started doing running because I'm built for it.
Yeah. Mark, a fun fact about Mark is Mark, at least back in the day, Mark could move pretty good for someone of his stature.
Girth. Let's call it girth.
Exactly. Right.
Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but one of my favorite Dan stories was actually I assume it was Hell Week. We had a ruck on our back, and like Dan said, I would do well in all the runs, especially giving the way physics was treating me, but we were standing on the beach heading south toward the elephant cages in Colorado. And I just remember standing shoulder to shoulder with you, and I was excited because today was the day I was going to beat Dan. I'm like, this guy weighs approximately half as much as I do, and he's got a 60-pound ruck on. And without missing a beat, when I said, hey, Dan, who's going to win this race? I mean, you didn't flinch, you didn't flicker, you just said me. And I didn't believe it. I was like, no, physics is finally going to let me win. There's no way that Dan can beat me with a 60-pound on. And you blew it away. I still don't understand how that works, but.
Yeah, well, that was my thing at Buds for sure. I mean, we had some good swimmers and some good O-Core stuff, but, every time we had to go run somewhere, I was like, oh, thank God I can just relax for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. People think that Buds is about swimming, but that's probably the third rate that you have to worry about. I mean, you got to be able to stay above the water. That's helpful, but it's all about running. And really, to me, building up the bone structure. Right? If you run enough miles, your legs are just stronger.
Yeah,
less prone to injury.
There were guys in our Buds class, man, who like literally joined the Navy not being able to swim, and then we're pretty good by the end of Buds. So it's very water oriented, but like they take all comers, and if you do the program, you're gonna be able to move pretty good in the water. That being said, funny story. So this was back when I was this was when I was in the SEAL teams. We had you were 10, but the tank over at Little Creek, I was over there one evening just getting a workout and I was swimming, and they had like I forget, it was Tidewater something, youth swimming or something, and they reserve a lane for the frogs who want to get in there and get a workout. And so I'm swimming and doing my workout, and there are a bunch of like 8-9-year-old girls like in the lane next to me. They're just like dusting me, just absolutely annihilating me. Anyone who's a competitive swimmer, it kind of the same thing. It's like, the people who swam at University of Texas or whatever, they must have thought swimming at Buds was a joke. Anyone with that competitive swimming background, it's gonna be easy day when the Navy asks you to do a swim.
Did you look over that lane and ask those 9-year-old girls how they'd handle 50-degree water and 30-foot waves?
Yeah. Probably talk some trash on the way out. But no, it's the same thing now. My wife's a pretty good swimmer. She swam in California growing up and club swimming and all that kind of stuff. And, she could not swim for 5 years and, get in the pool and just dust me. So
I almost think it's a different physiology. We can't spend our whole time on this, but it is like you find somebody that's an excellent swimmer, and it's not like you would think that if they're an excellent swimmer, they would be an okay runner.
Right.
But my uneducated experience in it's the opposite. It was like, if you're an excellent swimmer, you are a below average runner. You're still a phenomenal athlete, but I don't know what it is, and kind of vice versa. Like a great runner often aren't a good swimmer.
There's something about when you get a swimmer on dry land, and they kind of like don't really know how to move their body correctly. There's something to that for sure. Yeah.
All right, let's back up one up. What did you study at the United States Naval Academy?
Oh yeah, so I was a poli-sci guy. That seemed the easiest of majors for someone like me. I mean, so a fact for the listeners, the Navy wants engineers. They want people who are aerospace engineers and are gonna, not only fly but design the next generation of, fighter jets and stuff, and or submarines or whatever. And but then you get meatheads like me and Mark who are, much better served in, they let you do poli-sci, history, English, and to a lesser extent, like oceanography was kind of the, basically like being a weatherman. It's kind of the fallback for those of us who are not super strong at, Ohm's law or whatever. So, poli-sci was, something I was interested in, but, basically I just, kind of read the newspaper, read the Baltimore Sun or Washington Post or whatever it was, and, regurgitated other people's ideas on a daily basis. And that did that for 4 years, and then kind of went on, but the Naval Academy is, you got to take these core engineering classes, and that stuff's hard, man. Electrical engineering, it's for someone who wants to be a history major, asking them engineering is a pretty tall order.
And luckily I can recall none of that information.
Yeah. I did. Yeah.
Calc, chemistry, physics.
Right.
I got nothing.
Right. I remember there was something called a derivative, but that's it.
Now, one thing I thought was, the line of work you and I found ourselves in with this organization.
Yeah.
Upon reflection, I find it, because you would think somebody that was in the world of poli-sci would have a better formed, kind of domestic, kind of well-rounded in the world of politics, given the degree. But probably by design, as a military institution, there's not a lot of room for deep debate about domestic issues. And we're geared to work overseas, so everything we did was very internationally focused, right? It was all national security and that whole realm, intelligence.
Yeah, I think the military in general is, they need their engineers, right? And, but they're, in general, the military, especially when you get out of the sky and get off the ship and, you're in the 82nd Airborne, or, you're in the 1st MARDIV or whatever it is. Those are poli-sci kind of jobs. The liberal arts are, when you're overseas communicating with, an Afghan village elder, and you're trying to, convince them to, support you in ridding the valley of the Taliban. That's the kind of thing that, you kind of are better served by, liberal arts education. I think the military needs both. It's a whole other topic, but some of the damage that was done to the military in Vietnam, there are a lot of colleges, a lot of liberal arts colleges, a lot of high profile, places like Harvard that kicked ROTC off campus, which was, a huge mistake, because you're conceding, the military, right, to, people who don't think like you. So, the effect is, people in Vietnam are, they're worried that, having these ROTC units on campus is going to, have an effect on the campus and make the campus, reactionary or whatever. That's, a bunch of garbage. The real effect is when you kick ROTC off Harvard, you don't have any Harvard graduates going into the Army. And, and so it's kind of the opposite effect. These knee jerk, let's get rid of, the military. You're conceding the military to, a certain worldview. And I think that's, a mistake, but,
certainly.
Yeah. So, back to your original question. I think there's space for everybody. You certainly need somebody who knows how to run a nuclear reactor in the military. You also need people who know how to, who know how to read a book on, local history.
Carry heavy things.
Yeah, that's right. Carrying heavy things.
No, I guess the one thing I was going to add to our shared history in the world of poli-sci is, as far as political persuasion goes, you and I are both kind of grown up in the shadow of, George Bush, who was shot down in World War II, recovered to an aircraft carrier. John McCain he was often on the yard, and he was always a big presence. Colin Powell was, he hadn't quite made the transition to, I don't think, of politics at that time. Maybe he had. Yeah, actually he had by that point. But, as much as anything, that informed your view. So if you're a young man at the Naval Academy, young woman at the Naval Academy, you're already focused on international events and circumstances. just by virtue of the courses you're taking. And then you throw on the fact that the Republican Party was disproportionately represented by military leaders and for us heroes, it kind of became the default setting. So more on that later, but
I don't know how you were, man. I didn't even think about the Naval Academy for like 10 years. Like after I graduated, it was like, and then it's only in hindsight, you're like, wait, why do I kind of feel this way? And you're like, oh yeah, because I spent 4 years, talking about, honor and integrity.
right.
Like that's why. And I
Great
self-selected
point.
amongst other people who also thought honor and integrity was important. So the Naval Academy more, especially with what we're trying to do now and, VFRL, these folks from the service academies, and it's no knock on, anyone else who joined who didn't go to a service academy, obviously, but, there's a lot of people who care. There's a lot of, our membership who did go to a service academy, and they really, internalized the, that a core fundamental principle of leadership is ethical behavior. So, yeah, I mean, the Naval Academy more and more, I'm starting to see the point. I think you go there and you're like, God, this is, stupid. Who cares if my shoes are shined? There's nothing to do with being a Navy SEAL. And then, in hindsight, 20 years later, you're like, oh, actually, you know what? Being an honest person and an ethical leader and adhering to ethical principles has everything to do with being a good Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up. The people would be surprised at how much honor and integrity factored into your life at the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
I mean, and even to the extent of the military writ large, everything is circled around those ideas, those values. I mean, to the extent that we took, I don't know how many philosophy classes, right? And we would have conversations at lunch. We'd eat something real quick and run over and have an hour-long conversation about some issue involving integrity and leadership. And I mean, it was just from day one, it was just drilled into you. And I mean, the idea is, your leaders can't be everywhere at all times, and they're grooming you to be that leader. When you achieve that milestone. So if you're on a battlefield in Fallujah, you need to be able to make decisions based on your moral groundings. And I mean, and obviously the Naval Academy, they supercharge all that stuff because they own your body and soul for 4 years. But military writ large is that way. I mean, I took the hard route. I did the boot camp, did a little time in the submarines. I went to the Naval Academy prep school, the Naval Academy, and then BUD. So I've been kicked in the teeth several times now. And all that to say that every step along the way, the biggest underpinning that reached across all those experiences and those trainings was, are you a moral leader? Are you looking out for your guys? And you're not getting paid enough to do this work, right? You're not here for the paycheck because it's not commensurate with what you know and what we're asking you to do. But you need to find it within yourself to still execute the mission because it's the right thing to do, and you're here for your people. So, no, that was a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because that really does underpin. And it's the same thing. You wake up one day, you're like, oh, I didn't know I needed that stuff.
Right.
20 years later, like, oh,
yeah.
Let me look in that bag and see what's in there.
Yeah, that's true.
But all right, so let's run through this is more for entertainment value than anything else. But let's dive into the trip to BUD/S, how that worked out for you.
Yeah, right. So so I started in BUD/S class 238 and got pneumonia during Hell Week, so I got rolled back to Mark's class in 239. Got pneumonia a second time in Hell Week and got rolled back a third time, at which point I was seriously questioning my life choices. And then finally made it through Hell Week in BUD/S class 40. You know,
So
it's funny.
let's keep in count. That was 3 Hell Weeks.
3 Hell Weeks. Yeah. So one complete Hell Week and then 2 parts of Hell Week. So you know, I remember the first time in 238, I felt totally fine. And it was like, you know, but they had had a guy die,
Yeah.
you know, a couple classes prior to us. So they were super, you know, I forget the details, but I think they had some guy die during Hell Week, and they, you know, they did an autopsy and all that stuff. And, you know, the dude had pneumonia and they kind of let it go. So they were like super, they would check your oxygen saturation at every medical pit stop and stuff like that. So, you know, I remember the first one, it was like, we were only like maybe 12 hours into the thing or something like that, 24 hours in. And they were like, hey, you're done. You have, you know, your oxygen sat dropped. And I was like, what? And, you know, that was that. And then I was, you know, just hanging out in California until the next one formed. And I felt completely fine. And then in 239, Mark's Bud's class, which was a legit winter Hell Week with like 8-foot overhead surf and 45-degree water. I think I made it to like, you know, maybe like Wednesday or something. But I remember, I mean, you probably remember this. It literally snowed during your Hell Week. Like,
yes, hail.
Right. It was
rain.
San Diego and there was actually snow. So that one I felt sick. You know, when they pulled me out and I was like having a hard time breathing and stuff like that. And same thing. And, you know, I remember they were kind of like, you know, do you want to just quit or do you want to try again, you know, try a third class? And I was like, yeah, I'll try the third class. But you know, it was definitely like, all right, third time's the charm. And if this doesn't, you know, if I get pneumonia again, I'm going to go, you know, be on a ship for a couple of years. So then you know, but you know, Hell Week's one of those things that, looking, you know, it's miserable when you do it, right? Like, you know, it's no fun and all that stuff, but looking back on it, you know, the memories I have are all like hilarious memories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just, you know, you remember the funny stuff. You remember, you know, on Thursday or Friday, you know, when everyone's just delirious, like them having, you know, a dance contest or something, you know, like, you know, like that kind of stuff. You know, you remember, you know, winning a race and just sleeping with your boat crew under the boat and you know, just how good that felt. I remember going to the dining hall, which was always like a nice, like, you know, for half an hour you were warm and you got to eat food and, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, I remember, you know, vividly, you know, kind of how proud everyone was, you know, when they, you know, when they secured us, we were on the obstacle course doing some kind of, you know, boat PT or log PT or something. And then, you know, they had everyone stand at attention and then they, you know, about face and, you know, all the instructors are there and they've got a big smile on their face and an American flag. And, you know, that was one of, at that point, that was probably the proudest moment of my life. You know, I was you know, just incredibly relieved, especially after trying it twice before and not making it through. Just that, you know, we were able to do that. And you know, Hell Week's one of those things, man. You know, I'm sure you've heard this, you know, you hear people say, oh, it's colder in the SEAL teams, way colder than I was during Hell Week and all, you know. Nah, I was way colder than Hell Week. In the SEAL teams, we had like Gore-Tex and like wetsuits and dry suits, you know, all this stuff. I mean, Hell Week's miserable now. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, those V guys, I think they're the ones that really live the dream afterwards.
Right.
Stuck in a steel tube for God knows how many hours in the Puget Sound, Washington.
That's true. Right.
But it's funny, because I mean, again, for the listening audience, they tell you at the end of Hell Week to not go to a hospital because they would just admit you,
right,
as a matter of course. Because I mean, you look like you've been in a street fight. Your legs are bloody, and I mean, well, the doctor could tell us better, but I mean, there's a lot of good
Yeah.
reasons. They just admit you from the sheer appearance of you.
Well, you remember, like my legs got all, everyone's legs got super swollen. Like your ankles were
Yeah.
like, it looked nasty. And it went away. It was just from physically being upright for a week straight. But, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't remember that, but thinking about it now, if some 22-year-old came into the ER and had like 3+ pitting edema, up to their knees, yeah, we'd probably admit that kid.
But all that to say that your bicycle problem, people, nearly everybody's on the spectrum on their way to pneumonia, right? Whether it's low 2 oxygen, however you describe it,
Yeah.
but everybody's there. And it just, for me, it came down to what bike you got on.
Yeah.
So our classmate, Andy, he was a little upset about that, but him and I think were on the bike at the same time. And the medical corpsman who was watching his bikes said, "You're out of here." And I'd had some good interactions, or I don't recall why, but I was on good terms with the corpsman that was monitoring my bike, and I was borderline at best. And he's like, "You'll be all right." That's what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah. So for the listeners, I mean, what they literally did, like every medical check, they put you on an exercise bike and they made you pedal really fast, and you're hooked up to an oxygen monitor to see if your oxygen dropped. So that's how they pulled me. And that's, I wasn't the only one. Like there were multiple people who, got dropped for failing this test. So they wanted to see if your oxygen saturation dropped when you were exerting yourself. And, because I think, again, back to that trainee who had died a couple classes prior, I think that was, what they were concerned about. But, in the midst of Hell Week, and there's some dudes I know who were like, that was the worst part of Hell Week, was trying to get my heart rate up to 150 on the exercise bike. Yeah.
But yeah, it really is just man camp. I mean, if you grew up, because you were a rural kid too, trees and hunting, and Massachusetts is known for its cold. I mean, it's just more the same. I mean,
right.
God help those guys that come. The real men of America come from Miami, Florida, right? Come from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Don't even know what a cold raindrop feels like. And
right, and then they're sitting in the surf. Yeah.
And then they make it. You're like, how's that possible? I don't get it.
Yeah.
But so then we move on to the world of active duty. Did you finish up? 03? Is that when you were street legal?
Yeah. So we must have been early. Yeah, because I finished SQT right during OIF 1.
SEAL qualification training? That's kind of like the advanced school.
Right. Yeah. So, you go to jump school and you have
school.
the training and stuff. And then you finish up and, you're still like a total noob, but you think you know what you're doing. And our class was right when we invaded Iraq. So I got sent to the East Coast, to an East Coast team. And then there was some, and really then Iraq started, right? So, after OIF 1, there was kind of this lull for a little bit, and we're like, damn it, we missed it. And, and then I'm trying to think what, Najaf happened, and then the Blackwater guys got killed, out in Fallujah. And that was
hung up off a bridge.
Yeah, hung on the bridge. And that was right about the time we, when I first deployed, my first deployment was Iraq. And that was, I think we got there in maybe like August of 04. Yeah. And, we were mostly doing, we were caught up in that PSD mission. So we were mostly doing that. But this is not classified, but the SEAL teams provided personal security for some of the Iraqi politicians in the early days.
PSD is simply personal security detachment. So Secret Service, right?
Yeah, so we did that, and then the one thing that I had done, gosh, when was it? It must have been early 04. Was I'd gone to Marine Corps sniper school, and that was, kind of a boon to me. So I went to Camp Pendleton, and the Steels. We have our own, in-house sniper school, but we also, occasionally get billets to other military training, whether it's Army free fall school or Ranger school or something like that. And we had me and another team guy that I knew finagled a spot to Marine Corps sniper school, which was a great, as far as shooting and stalking and sniper skills, was a great school. But then when I was in Iraq, the sniper missions were a big deal, especially the way that war was going at the time. The big killer of American troops was the IED threat. So, a good bang for your buck, if you will, was to have sniper teams, whether it's conventional guys or us or whomever, watching IED emplacers. And, that's what, a lot of the missions were in those days was, you're watching Road X, and, if any of the Mooj come out and start digging in the roadway, you take care of that problem. So, because I'd gone to sniper school, I was able to get in on Fallujah, which was kind of the, I went up to the commander. I was like, hey, you got to let me go. You got to let me go. And, I went to Marine Corps sniper school, blah, blah, blah. I speak Marine, because the Marine Corps were the guys who were going to take back Fallujah. Right. And so that's how that, happened. And the JSOTF, the special ops, got tasked to support that assault with snipers and JTACs, who are like guys who, call in airstrikes and stuff like that.
So Fallujah 1, right?
It was, so I was Fallujah 2.
So that was 2?
1, so April. Yeah, so April, kind of immediately after the contractors got killed.
Okay, that's right.
And all that stuff. There was an April assault, and then it got kind of called off, right in the middle of it. The idea was we're going to let the Iraqis take back their own city. That didn't pan out all that well. Zarqawi was in Fallujah. That's where they're cutting off heads. They cut off Nicholas Burke's head in Fallujah. And so, me and 8,000 of my closest friends in November, went into the city and that, I said earlier, Hell Week was the proudest moment of my life, but to that point, but, the thing I'm most proud of now is having been in a battle with other Navy SEALs and doing what we had to do and doing our mission. So we went into the city, and we were in the city for a couple of weeks at one pop, and then we went back in a few times. But we're doing sniper stuff and killing bad guys, and that's what we did. And I still am very proud of the men I served with and what we were able to do, and hopefully we saved some lives in the Marine Corps. These 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who were kicking in doors and were counting on us to be up on the rooftops and make sure no one snuck up on them or whatever.
Yeah, and to paint that job, basically what Dan was doing was running 3-4-man crew, something like that.
We had 8.
Okay, I mean, that's pretty
yeah.
But you had 8 dudes that would just bounce from rooftop to rooftop, blow a hole in the side of a building, stick a gun out. I mean, just on the scope, looking out for bad guys, hours on hours, and you're with the Marines, but you're not. I mean, they kind of know where you are, but a trigger little 19-year-old up in a turret with a cal, it could be just as dangerous as a couple of enemy forces run up the stairwell at you. So
yeah,
that's as far as you can get out on the tip of the spear.
Right.
There's no.
My literal heroes, like literally, I view these guys as heroes. Are those Marine privates who were kicking in the door and closing with the enemy and getting in gunfights from 6 feet away and finding the enemy and destroying them. you know, that's what the job was, and that's what these kids did, and they did it unquestioningly, unhesitantly. You know, they're true warriors.
No, you always hear people talk about the new generations, but if you see them in action, you don't have to worry.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's the biggest crock. You know, every generation is like, oh, the next generation, they're weak or whatever. No, these kids, no, these kids closed with the enemy and took that city back. You know, Fallujah was a fight, right? Like, you know, that was one of the, you know, we mentioned before, there are a lot of IEDs in Iraq and stuff like that. But, you know, Fallujah was like, they had ground. They said, we're keeping this ground. This is our ground. Come and take it. And we did. And, you know, we, you know, said, all right, let's fight. And, you know, we went after them, and we, you know, we put it down their throats. And, you know, that's one of the few times in the Iraq war that happened.
I don't know if you remember this. You actually sent me, maybe you CC'd a bunch of folks on it, but you sent a letter about basically an after action report. Hey, this is what my experience was. That was the most entertaining / helpful document that I received. I think during my whole time at that team, it was hilarious.
Yeah, we had a lot of lessons learned for sure, you know, but, you know, so we're in the city for a few weeks, and then, you know, came home, and, you know, I think in February, you know, but that was a, you know, as a young Lieutenant JG, that was kind of a formative experience for me, for sure.
Now, and I'm glad you brought up the idea of the PSD job, basically the Secret Service, the Iraqis. I got rolled up in that as well, and I think that with the overall, because you're just marinating in it constantly. We're in and out of the green zone, which is the diplomatic core of Baghdad, which is the diplomatic core of the country. Yeah. And so you just see how this democracy, if you want to call it that, is operating, and the infighting. That really formed how I view America's politics, frankly.
Those guys were trying to create what we already have. And, you know, and we're trying to preserve what we already have. But, you know, yeah, there's something about being present to see, you know, small D Democrats and small R Republicans trying to come up with a system of government, you know, that works for everybody. And, you know, it kind of highlights the importance of, you know, on some levels, the threat to American democracy that we're dealing with right now. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
No, and that's one thing that we couldn't figure out, because I mean, again, you're right there in the middle of their inner circles every day, and it was all a family enterprise. Nobody within the inner circle was outside of the village in which they came, and we couldn't figure out, because if you join the military, no one cares if you're from Biloxi, Mississippi, or New York City. You're picked on the you know, the merits and qualifications you have, and you're given the mission. There, it's the exact opposite. Hey, I need somebody that I can trust in the inner circle. I don't care if you can do the job. I don't care if you're qualified. And that just permeated the entire government.
Almost like having your kids and your son-in-law carry out official government duties is not the best way.
That's a weird hypothetical, but
yeah.
So we're gonna pick up the pace a little bit, but sure. The other part of your military journey I thought was fascinating was, you know, kind of along the same vein. You made a trip to North Africa, right?
Yeah. So you know, I was in one of my deployments was in the great nation of Chad. There were you know, we were doing FID. It was a FID mission, foreign internal defense, but it turned out to be a little bit, you know, there were, at the time, I'm trying to say this without saying anything I shouldn't say, but you know, at the time there were radical Islamic factions in Northern Africa that the government was interested in combating, and were willing to have American forces come help in that effort. So we did some of that.
And people don't realize, you think, I mean, obviously Fallujah would be an exception to the rule, but when you're in a combat zone that's fully stood up, I mean, there's helicopters rotating all the time waiting to come rescue you. There's a bunch of Bubbas in, armored vehicles waiting around the corner to come pull you out of a fight. It's kind of the best place to go to war.
Agreed.
But again, I think you wrote something back to the rest of us about your time there, and you're just maybe a 5-man band, and agree the size of 3 Texases, something like that. And so if you get hurt, you're on your own. There's no safety net.
That was the that was the interesting thing about Africa, right? Like, just like you said, you get in a gunfight in Iraq and it's like, well, I've got 2 AC-130s overhead, both of them. But you get in a gunfight in Africa and it's a 7-hour drive to the French hospital. Oh, and by the way, the French, there's no American hospital and there's no American assets. Everything you can, your choices are to beg the French to come help you out, or spin up a unit in Germany to come down, which is, a 24-hour event kind of thing. And so, in Africa, you're really kind of reliant on those relationships that you build with the host nation to try to handle things like that. And long story short is, we got in a couple of gunfights in Africa and we're not equipped. State Department didn't want us to have long guns. I had a 9mm pistol in the middle of a firefight with a couple hundred rebels, essentially. With one other SEAL in my vehicle, so that's the margin of error there. That's much less likely to happen. But I mean, what happened to those guys in Niger, those Green Berets, that kind of stuff is going on, all the time. There's like 120 nations that there are U.S. troops in. And, some of those are, Japan, right? But, some of those are Rwanda or, Uganda or Tanzania or, or Eritrea or whatever. And, we don't have the infrastructure everywhere. Sometimes, there really are people who are just kind of hanging it out. So, that's kind of what happened to me. And I was very lucky that no one was hurt. And, the host nation in that case really saved our lives, because they got out and they did have long guns and they got out and returned fire and, bought enough time for us to sort of break contact. But, Africa was sporty, for sure.
So after that little journey through the military, how do you bring yourself to the world of medicine?
Yeah, so I got out in in 07, and I tried to, I'd originally tried to go across the street, so to speak, and turns out I was not very good at skydiving, and was given a choice to take a set of orders to Bahrain for 18 months. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I think I'm good. So got out and used a GI Bill and, moved up to Vermont and started taking classes. And, that was kind of humbling, taking freshman biology as a 29-year-old, SEAL. And then ended up using the GI Bill to go to medical school, and decided pretty early on that I was going to do emergency medicine, and did med school. Went to New Mexico for 3 years. Did a residency in emergency medicine at University of New Mexico, which is an incredible program. Great training. Lots of really sick patients who present really late in the game. So you're kind of always dealing with someone who's in septic shock or got run over by a car on the res or, whatever it is. So can't say enough good things about New Mexico. and then took a job back here in Vermont. My wife's also a physician, and we both decided to take jobs up here. It was one of the few hospitals that had openings for both of us, and as a New Englander, it's good to be back.
You won't be bothered with warm heat.
That's right. Yeah, people up here, it's funny, like the youth sports, they'll shut it down if it's like 90 degrees and humid. And I'm like, what do you think the kids in Florida are doing? You're like, you guys you're leaving chips on the table here.
Yeah, we call that probably about March.
Right.
Orlando.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the real reason of running through Dan's bio is the idea that how all this experience, very, quite varied, in kind of informs who you became, and by extension, how you view the moment we're in. So what role has your medical experience played in all of that?
When you're trained in medicine, when you see patients every day, I do think it brings to light, it forces you to realize that, this is something that I think some SEALs really struggle with. Really it teaches, you have to be empathic, right? And so, one thing about the SEAL teams that I don't think we kind of verbalize enough or really recognize enough, your typical SEAL is, this kind of hard charging, young, in shape, type A personality, ready to kick in the door and shoot someone in the face, right? Like that's the world we came from, and not everyone's like that, right? And it's not their fault they're not like that. Like, if you're a Navy SEAL, you're a statistical outlier, right? Like you're really far on the spectrum of, aggression or willingness to accept physical risk, performance under pressure, all this kind of stuff. And that's something that doesn't exist with everyone. So, for, you and I might, be put in a situation where something, doesn't even get our pulse rate up. But, for a civilian, people come in with a panic attack because they felt, their heart flutter, right? And so, you have to, as a physician now, you have to realize that not everyone's coming from the same place. And, and that's one of the things about, the SEAL teams, like, those guys, in that world, in that job, that's an advantageous trait that we self-select for. But it can be, it can be a drawback in the rest of life. If I had to go into a situation, God forbid, there was a school shooter or something like that, and someone needed to run in there, I'd want to go in with another Navy SEAL, right? There's no one I'd rather go into that situation with. But if I had to explain to a mom that her 6-year-old is not actually sick and it's really just a stuffy nose and the kid's fine, that's a different situation. So, you need to be able to recognize that, that gift of aggression, and it is a gift, is only applicable in certain situations, and it's not applicable everywhere. And that was something that took me a while to get used to, but now that, I've kind of, more time has passed and things like that, I think, I recognize that, some of the fetishization of the military, that we see now is kind of misplaced. You see it on behalf of Trump too. I mean, he's, all in, pardoning war criminals, and like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like that's revenge flick. That's like Liam Neeson and Taken, right? Like that's not the way the real world is. It's like Navy SEALs conduct professional military operations under the law of war, and we're devastatingly effective when we do that. Pardoning people who execute Afghans is counterproductive, immoral, and it shows a completely distorted worldview of what the military actually does.
No, and in later episodes, we'll get into a lot of that,
Yeah.
where, again, the idea, we've talked about this a lot, where the real value proposition that the Veterans for Responsible Leadership brings to our political discourse in this moment is that guys like you have been in those situations. You know what it's like to depend on your host nation forces, and you know what kind of bond that takes, and you know what it means to conduct yourself ethically, if for no better reason that it saves it makes the guys that come in after you safer, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the standard that America set for itself, and it's because the world sees us through that lens that we frankly get away with a lot of things that we're seen as the moral actors on the international stage. And so definitely a longer conversation for another time, but I think that's why you've been very well positioned to take up this fight, is you have that breadth of experience rooted in those early years of Plato's and Socrates at the Naval Academy, all the way through to your time obviously in Fallujah and the deserts of North Africa. And now you're on the humanitarian side of things. You're helping people out, and you're seeing the real impacts of our administration, on everyday folks' lives. So,
right, and veterans get it, right? Like, so there's kind of this narrative around veterans that is complete garbage. Yes, there are veterans with physical wounds. There are veterans with psychological wounds. That's not me, and that's not the vast majority of people who served in the military. Veterans are not victims, and we're not a monolith. I won't name names, but I've receivd dozens of emails, text messages, phone calls from Navy SEALs, Green Berets. Those are primarily the two groups that have reached out to me, who are like, hey, I agree with you. You're doing the right thing. I don't want to speak out because of XYZ, which is fine, but I agree with you. So this narrative that Trump has the support of everybody in the military is false. It's wrong.
mm-hmm.
No way. It's not true. Does he have the support of some people? Sure, he does. But I don't even think it's a majority anymore, because people recognize that leadership matters, and leadership matters a lot when you're sending people into harm's way.
Let's jump on that grenade a little bit. Because you know back and forth on this, and you got off the fence quicker than I did. Just like you're describing, I was very reticent to put this shining face on the internet, to raise your voice. I mean, I come from a background not dissimilar from yours, so chances are I'm probably alienating or mildly upsetting over half the people I know on this earth, right? Yep. Especially on the military side of things. Yep. But what was it? What was the breaking point that allowed you to say, you know what, that's it? I don't,
yeah.
Ramifications be damned. Why am I now ready to step off and raise my voice?
Exactly. So VFRL, let me just say this. So VFRL started as this Facebook group in 2017. And my initial, in the back of my brain, the way this is going to go is I'm never going to have to say anything publicly. I'm just going to get some rich guys to give me some money, and we're going to make anti-Trump ads and run them in Michigan. And no one will really know that, it's me, and I'm going to have my cake and eat it too. The SEAL guys I know who like Trump are not going to be mad at me, because they're not going to know it's me, because, all this stuff, right? So you can't do that. That's impossible to do. What works, if you're trying to play, is to tell your story and to tell why you think X, Y, Z. So you cannot have your cake and eat it too. I mean, maybe you can if you're like, the Russian GRU, and you just have a million bots, and you're, running propaganda about how COVID is fake and stuff like that. But, if you want to make a difference in your democracy, in your society, you have to stand up to do it. And so it took me a couple of years to really kind of realize that, until after the midterm. So even up to 2018, we ran ads in one of the midterm races, mostly just to learn about the process. I mean, there was a candidate we really liked. We ran ads on his behalf, and, it ultimately didn't move the needle. And then, what I realized was someone has to walk point, man. So, you walk into the Korangal Valley, like someone has to be on point. And so, there's what I'm hearing from vets is there's value in having someone go first and having someone, almost give permission, right? Like, right. You're almost saying, hey, no, like that voice in the back of your head that's like, hey, Donald Trump is kind of a crappy POTUS and not doing a good job, and he's really screwing things up. You're not the only one who feels that way. And here is somebody who went up on TV and, put it on the line for that. And, so I think speaking out, does take a certain degree of, all right, let's do this. Right. You have to be willing to take the heat. And, there's the ridiculous stuff. Like there's crazy people on the internet who are like,
I never heard that.
Yeah. They're the people who are like, Dan Barkhuff is actually a secret neo-Nazi, or, whatever it is, whatever crazy thing that, and that's whatever, who cares? I mean, I see mentally ill people in my job every single day. They're prone to making ludicrous statements. But that's not the people that, what would be, personally, like I'd have a hard time with would be someone, coming out and saying, making a really intelligent, well-formed argument and saying you're abusing, whatever. And, you're abusing the memory, you're abusing something that, and
appropriating.
But I don't think I am. And I don't think we are. I disagree with, if someone feels that way, we have this quiet professional ethos. Well, is what we're doing, counter to that quiet professionalism? Well, I think that quiet professionalism refers to when you're on active duty and in the SEAL teams, number one. And number two, I mean, Trump, I'll tell you a quick story. Like, this is not even a good story, but, one time I worked this overnight shift and I'm in scrubs and, I'm coming home and I got a flat tire, and it was 8:30 in the morning. I'd been up all night and I just wanted to go home and go to bed, but my car had a flat tire and I had to get out of the damn car in the middle of New Mexico heat and change the tire. And it was a huge pain in the butt, and get down on my knees in scrubs and, scrape up my knees and, get the jack out and, do all that stuff. That's what Trump is. Trump is a flat tire on the car that is the United States of America. And we're not going to go anywhere, whether you're conservative or liberal, until we change the flat. It's really disrupted everything about our society and, our, where we are in terms of kind of world affairs and where we are domestically. And until we change the flat, and you got to go fix the flat, man. There's no two ways about it. He has to go.
No, and one thing I like about your style is, and frankly, even in my own involuntary listening of unhealthy amounts of political information, whether it's the Bulwark, any of your major channels, CNN, you name it. I absorb way too much of this information, but when I talk with folks that don't disagree with me, we'll go at it, right? I mean, it's all respectful, but
Mhm.
we'll change ideas, and then we'll be on a different topic, and we'll be talking about hunting or kids or whatnot, and it's like yin and yang. And all that to say that one thing I've respected about your approach to all this is it's nothing personal, right? The democracy is built for folks to have uh, this political discourse and this back and forth and exchange of ideas. So even when somebody writes something to you that's just off the wall, confrontational, you write back a very nice, thoughtful, well articulated letter that I'm sure
Yeah,
spins them out of
and you know,
control.
when you get the hate mail, you know, 75% of the time, if you take a second and reply and be like, and you know what I say, and I believe this, which is why I'm saying it. I'm like, hey, clearly you're very passionate. Clearly you care a lot about this country. You know, we disagree on X, Y, Z, right? But you know,
Mhm.
I respect the fact that you care enough to be involved in our political process, and that's true. I do respect that. I do see how in 2016, you know, you could have pulled the lever for Trump. You know, I get that. I get it. I don't agree that we can reelect this guy in 2020. And
Mhm.
you know, there's nothing that's going to change my mind on that. And you know, I'm sure some of the folks I interact with, there's nothing that's going to change their mind either. You know, but there are some voters out there who still you know, are on the fence. And you know what VFRL is all about is like, hey, you know, our collective patriotism is, you know, you can't argue with it. Like we're veterans who fought, you know, 20 years of war.
Mhm.
You know, we went and we served and we flew jets and we drove ships in the South China Sea and we, you know, flew 60s into the Korangal Valley and we did foot patrols in Ramadi. You know, you can't say we don't love America. That's bullshit. And you know, that's our strength. That's our strength is you know, because the typical attack is, well, you don't love America, right? Like if you don't love Trump, you don't love America. No, we do, and you know, Trump needs to go. So you know, that's what we're all about, and that's why people listen to us is because we did do that. We did serve. We did do those things that, you know, only 1% of the country did, and you have to take our voices seriously because of it.
Yeah, no, and you see that on our correspondence, especially new members coming in saying, "Hey, I was a 18-year-old kid uh, in Vietnam as a Marine, and I took the oath and carried the gear, and damn it, I'm back there again. I'm a
Yep.
60, 70-year-old man,
Mhm.
and now I gotta put on the gear again, right?
Yep.
It's metaphorical, but it's really not. It's
Yeah.
it's that sense of, hey, I was willing to sacrifice all that I had, all those years ago, and I'm willing to do it again. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the real value of what we're trying to build here is giving people permission to step out of their comfort zone. If a couple of knuckle draggers like us can get on the internet and take the heavies that come, then hopefully that gives more voices, uh, permission to be heard.
Absolutely. And guys, check us out at VFRL.org. You know, or look us up on Facebook. But you know, there, if you've got this little voice in the back of your head that's saying, "Hey, I don't think I can vote for Trump, man," you're not alone. There's thousands of us. There are tens of thousands of us. And you know, Trump doesn't just. You can't just count on the military support. We're, you know, the veterans. You know, we took our oath seriously and we still do. And, you know, there are going to be some haters and you know what, fine. That's not what this is about. We're trying to make this, you know, safe for our kids. I've got 4 kids. Mark's got 2 kids. You know, we need to bequeath to them a democracy that works.
No, and I would just add that it's not just the veteran community. We have Gold Star mothers in
Yep.
our ranks. We have
Yep.
people that support the military,
Yep.
folks that have worked in government. So it's it's a wide swath of
Yep.
represented, so for sure. But probably the biggest thing that binds most of us is the idea that you took an oath all
Yep.
those years ago.
Yep.
So I appreciate it, Dan. I think we
Awesome, Mark.
we knocked this out. We were shooting for an hour, and we are at about an hour and a half. That's how it
Excellent.
goes. We could probably
That's how
make
it
it
goes,
3
man.
hours if we wanted to. Yeah, for the listeners, we're going to try to churn out probably one a week. Look for low production quality.
Yep.
We're going to get these voices out and just keep us in conversations. Reach out on social media if there's topics you want to hear about, people you'd like to see presented, and we'll do the best to meet those. So, Dr. Dan Barkhuff, I appreciate all this. This has been pretty fun. Took
Absolutely.
quick 20.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the time.
You bet, buddy. We'll
All
be
right.
in touch.
Anytime, guys.